Hi, I'm Jim Huling, and welcome to this edition of Execution Insights, the podcast. This podcast is where leaders can step away from all the noise and all the urgent priorities of leadership, and for a moment, we can go deeper into what truly makes a leader great, so that whatever we build from the inside out not only matters, it lasts. Let's get to it. Hi, I'm Jim Huling, and I want to welcome you to this episode of Execution Insights, the podcast. Do you remember the scene from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade? You know the one I'm talking about, where Indy stands at the edge of a bottomless canyon, and his father's life depends on him crossing. But there's no bridge. There's only air, only emptiness. And so in that moment, Indy closes his eyes, he steadies his breath, and he steps forward into what looks like certain death. And in that instant, the bridge suddenly appears. I think every one of us that was in a theater in those days held our breath in that moment, didn't we? And we felt this tremendous release when the unseen became seen. Well, as leaders, I think we face that kind of moment often. It may not be life or death, but it can feel like it. You know what I mean? The path isn't clear, or the numbers aren't complete, or the outcome certainly isn't guaranteed. And yet everybody's watching and waiting to see what you and I will do. And in those moments, what carries us forward is not analytics, it's faith. And I don't mean faith in the abstract sense. I mean faith in the rock solid sense of belief. Belief is the most powerful expression of faith in leadership that we can ever demonstrate. And when we believe in our team, I promise you this, something wakes up inside them. They rise taller, they push harder. One of my clients says they put their shoulders back and look you in the eye, and more importantly, they reach further than they ever thought was possible. And when we believe in our purpose, our conviction stops being fragile and it becomes like fire. I mean, when we believe in ourselves, don't you feel it? We carry a steadiness that no storm can shake. In fact, faith is so powerful that we often underestimate it. We resist trusting in forces unseen, and we insist that only what can be seen and be measured is reliable, which is just crazy, isn't it? But here's the paradox. The unseen force of belief often determines whether people rise to the challenge or shrink back from it. Just take a minute. Think back to a time when someone looked you in the eye and said, "I believe in you." Do you remember not only the words, but how they landed in your heart? That moment probably gave you strength you didn't know you had. And as leaders, we hold that same power in our hands every single day. Not long ago, I worked with a wonderful senior leader named Bill, whose team was in real trouble. His results were slipping and morale was low, and people were second guessing themselves at every turn. And when he came to me for coaching, he said, "Jim, I just don't know what's missing." Now, we paused for a moment, and then I asked him a simple question. Does your team know whether you believe in them or not? Now, I asked the question with kindness, but I want to tell you, it hit him hard, because the truth was they didn't know. They saw his frustration. They could see his doubts, his endless analysis of what was wrong, but they had never once heard him say, "Hey, everybody, I believe in you." They hadn't felt his actions line up with words like that. So after our coaching session, he made a great change. He called his team together, and not with a new strategy or with a slide deck or a fancy polished speech. He pulled them together in a circle with a message from his heart. And he said, "Hey, everybody, I want you to hear me loud and clear. I believe in this team. I believe we have the talent, the creativity, and the grit to succeed. And I want you to all know that I'm going to back that belief with everything I do." And then the best part, he lived it. He went on to celebrate small wins, and he protected the team from outside noise, and he made sure he invested in their growth and reminded them daily of his confidence. And within just a few months, the turnaround was unmistakable. Not because of a new system, but because of a new belief that lit a fire that nothing else could. Somewhere today, he's out there, and I like to think he's hearing this message and smiling as we revisit the lessons of his experience. But here's the truth. When leaders doubt, people shrink. When leaders believe, people expand. It's just that simple. Uncertainty doesn't just test our plans, it tests our purpose. And in times of disruption and distraction, the temptation is to cling to what's familiar. The old processes, the old spreadsheets, the old org charts, and the way of doing things. But what really steadies us is purpose. Purpose will hold when everything else shifts. I've seen teams weather massive change, not because their strategy was flawless. In fact, it wasn't, but because their sense of purpose was unshakable. They knew why they existed as a team. They knew who they served, and they knew what they stood for. And when you and I, as leaders, will hold fast to purpose, we give our teams more than just direction. We give them meaning. And meaning is what fuels perseverance for the long game and clears the way forward when it's unclear. So today, as you're listening to this episode, ask yourself, what purpose do you believe in deeply enough that it can anchor you and your team when the path ahead isn't clear? As I begin to close this episode, I want to share a very personal story to bring this home. For more than 20 years at one point in my life, all of my training, every degree I had earned, and every leadership role I had ever held was in technology. I had led tech professionals my entire career. And then one day, I became a CEO. And when I walked into that office on day one, I was suddenly responsible not only for technology, but for marketing and sales and finance and human resources and administrations. And by the way, dozens of unique remote offices that each had their own culture. And I'll be completely honest, it was overwhelming. And deep down, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, they've made a terrible mistake. I'm just not ready for this responsibility. But I'll never forget the day when I looked into the eyes of my team. And what I saw there was not my insecurity. What I saw there was their belief. They believed I could lead, even if I wasn't sure of it myself. And in that season of my life, what sustained me wasn't intellect or effort or aptitude, I promise. It was faith. The faith that my team had in me, and the faith that I drew from my family and my friends and my mentors and my beliefs. And the faith I held inside that I had been called to this role for a purpose is what literally took me through that time. So here's a great truth I want to share with you today. When you believe in yourself, even in seasons of doubt or adversity, your team feels it. They see it in the steadiness of your presence, the confidence in your decisions, and the way you carry yourself when the pressure is high. You see, confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is faith in the preparation you've done and in the resilience you've built and the values that you refuse to compromise. You put all that together, and that kind of faith is contagious, is the right word. So for a minute, let's go back to the story of Indiana Jones. Remember this, the bridge didn't appear until Indy stepped out. But here's what's more important for you and me today as leaders. The bridge appeared because he stepped out. You see, that's the essence of leadership in uncertain times. The bridge of faith only reveals itself when we move forward in belief. Belief in our team, belief in our purpose, and belief in ourselves. There's no methodology and no technology and no ideology that can equal the simple power of looking another human being in the eye and saying, I believe in you. And then, of course, proving it with your actions. So today, as we finish this podcast, I want to leave you with 3 questions to carry into next week that I think will help you on your journey. Number 1, who on your team most needs to hear, I believe in you? And then to see you align your actions with those words. Number 2, what purpose do you believe in so deeply that it steadies your team when the way forward is uncertain? And third and last, and maybe most important, where do you need to renew your own belief in yourself so that you can lead with confidence? If you remember nothing else from this episode of Execution Insights, I hope you hold on to this. The bridge only appears when you and I take the first step. And the people who follow us will only come when we go first. Thank you so much for listening to this message today. I'm Jim Huling, and I'll see you in the next episode of Execution Insights, the podcast.